I think there's a real danger here, of just moving too fast, and being the kind of person who's tossed about by every wind of doctrine. Good morning and welcome to the Larson Hicks Show. I guess it's morning for me. It may not be for you, but I hope wherever you are, you're having a good one. I just want to get on today and talk a little bit about something that my friend Michael Foster posted on his Facebook page. And if you follow him on social media, you probably saw it in the last week or so. I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. So he made this point about this compared changing positions, theological positions, to driving a car, and how the faster you drive, the more subtle your turns need to be, and if you turn too fast, you can flip and wreck your car. So he's just warning that quick changes rarely stay put. So excellent point. Is actually a point that he and I had talked about before, and I love the metaphor. I think he's spot on. And I just want to talk about it a little bit because I think it's important point to dwell on for a minute. And basically for me, it's this. I think there's a real danger here, of just moving too fast, and being the kind of person who's tossed about by every wind of doctrine. That doesn't, I don't think when we're taught, when that's, I think it's in James, where we hear that exhortation to not be tossed about by every wind of doctrine. I don't think that he's necessarily assuming that every wind of doctrine is inaccurate or wrong. He's just talking about the act of being tossed about, and that's wrong. And I think that's where I want to focus here, is that I'm excited about what I believe, and if somebody asks me about it, I'm going to tell them about it, right? And I'm going to argue as clearly as I can, as compellingly as I can. And I think that's just natural, and I think that's okay. But I do think there's a real danger, and I think it's one that I have to remind myself that Michael Foster's comments make me want to slow down, slow my roll on my sales pitch. I'm interested in sales. I like convincing people. It's a good feeling, when you have such good communication with somebody that they actually change their mind on something. Like, that's such a rare experience that it's hard not to get excited and to like go, oh, you think that's awesome? Let me tell you about the next thing. And I especially think pastors need to be put themselves in check on this point. In our particular little denomination, I'm in the CREC, the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, and there's actually, we're experiencing kind of a growth spurt right now. It seems like all across the country, there's a lot of churches who are experiencing growth. And I think those pastors need to hear this warning, to not be encouraging people to change their views on a bunch of things really quickly. And that seems counterintuitive. I think pastors think, well, isn't that my job? My job is to teach people, doctrine. I'm supposed to be here to answer questions about doctrine. And if people ask me, I'm going to tell them, and I'm going to convince them, and I'm going to argue with them until they get it right. No, I don't think that's your job. I think your job is to be a pastor. It's to care for the souls of people who the Lord brings to your flock, right? And so that means if they have got firmly held convictions about baptism, about eschatology, about fill in the blank, head coverings, KJV only, whatever the thing is, your job as a pastor is not to disabuse them of all of those wrong thoughts. The first step, I think, and the thing that I think is really important for everyone for every church to care deeply about, it's something we care very deeply about, is Catholicity. It's the idea that we are a confessional church. We have as a church a confessional standard, but that's a standard that the elders have to ascribe to. It's not a standard that the members have to ascribe to. They have to submit to it, but they don't have to. We don't put them through an examination and test their accuracy, across every single thing. So when I became an elder at my church, I did have to share all of my exceptions to the Westminster, and so I spent a lot of time reading through, going back over and over, because I wanted the guys that I'm serving with, and for our kind of mother church to know exactly where I stand theologically and what my concerns are and what my differences are. That's not what we do for new members, nor do I think we should, right? Because they're not in a position of oversight and teaching, and so. So here's I think there's a phenomenon that I think it happens especially with like nerdy people who have never had influence over other people, nerdy pastors, who have never been influential. Maybe they're not really leaders in or haven't really been leaders in their normal kind of life up until they became a pastor. And they find themselves, it's kind of like the ring of power. It's like they find themselves with this power over people, this ability to convince people just through their words of things, because people look up to him. They have the title pastor, and they're like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. I want to submit to him. There's something good, obviously, about somebody who comes into a church and says, I want to understand and learn, and I want to get on board. I want to assimilate with this church. And I'm not discouraging that. I'm just encouraging people to take their time, right? We have a lot of people joining our church who have different views than our official position on the topic of baptism. And one of the things I've said over and over in membership interviews and conversations with people who've come to our church is, I don't want you to change this view. I'm not here to try to convince you to change this view. We are available to talk through the issues as you think through them. We want to encourage you to think through them, and actually, more than anything, we just want you to understand where we're coming from, so you don't think we're crazy. You've heard kind of the caricature of our position. I'd like you to hear. You've heard the straw man. I'd like you to hear the kind of iron, man, the steel man version of what our doctrine is. More so that you can get to a point of having an easier time being charitable. And having Catholicity with me, and not this view that like, wow, this person's so dumb. Don't they see it? Like, isn't it obvious? So I think that's an important step. You get to where you feel like you understand the positions on their own terms, and you're not just reading your guys' books, your positions books and your positions people. You do the work. I encourage that. But a lot of us don't have the bandwidth for that, right? We don't have the bandwidth to do just tons of theological research. And so I would just say, look, join a healthy church. If you don't agree with every one of their theological positions, that's okay. You don't need to go into it with a mindset of, we got to find the perfect church doctrinally. There should be some probably basics that are central to you, and you and your wife can come up with those. But then I think, take your time, take your time getting to know these people. And so like on the position of baptism, I've always said, nobody who grew up Baptist, as I did, is going to be argued over into a Paedo-Baptist view. That's not going to happen. Like, there's not going to be an argument that's going to get you there. We could stack up our verses, and just go back and forth. And it's kind of a stalemate, and that's okay, right? The only way anybody's going to be argued, in my opinion, in my own experience with that particular doctrine, was I understood the arguments. I felt like I got to a point to where I saw, okay, these people aren't crazy. This is a reasonable, defensible position. It's a historic position. It's got a lot of theological implications that make sense to me. And then it was just living in community in a Paedo Baptist church, and over time starting to see how that theology, that particular position, worked itself out in people's lives, and realized, yeah, okay, I think this is actually right. Like I've lived with it for long enough, and seen the implications of it long enough that it's like, yeah, it all adds up, and I think I'm there. That didn't happen overnight, and that's I think exactly how it should be. So that's my encouragement rather for you, if you are in that moment right now where you are on fire about all these new ideas. You grew up, Church of Christ, or you grew up Nazarene, or you grew up Baptist, and you find yourself at a Reformed Presbyterian church, and you're just like, your head's on fire. You're reading Calvin, you're reading Luther, you're reading all the, in our circles, you got the Reconstructionist guys, you got Bonson and Van Til and Rushdoony, and you're just like, oh my gosh, all of these things are so awesome. Slow down, just slow down. It's not going to be good for you to just do a whole overhaul. And in fact, I've seen it. Okay, I've seen and known people who every 6 months, every year or two, they were onto a whole new program, from Baptist to like Catholic to Reformed to Eastern Orthodox. That's not a healthy place. You don't want to be there, right? G.K. Chesterton says the point of an open mind is the same as an open mouth. It's good insofar as you eventually close on something and take it in and digest it, right? So it's okay, especially when you're younger. I think this is common right after a young person leaves the home, goes to college, and goes, hey, I think it's pretty natural for a young man to go, I've left my home, I'm establishing my own household. What do I believe? Like, what is, like, for me in my house, what are our commitments, right? I don't think that's unusual. That's a pretty normal, healthy thing to happen. But again, the danger is just going too fast, going so fast that you're because what you're doing is you're devaluing the years and years of catechesis, that you went through. You're basically severing ties with your family and your friends, and that's not a good thing to do, and even if it's all happening in your own brain, it's all making sense. What about all your families and what about all your family and your friends, right, that you grew up with? They're just going to see that you are going through a phase, right? And they're going to just wait for you to grow out of it. And frankly, you probably will, right? If it's that easy to just switch out your doctrine and your theology once, it's going to be just as easy to do it a second time, right? And so, I think take time. I want to encourage people to take time on these kinds of changes. I want to encourage pastors to not get drunk on the power of their influence on people and take people through a wild transformation. This isn't conversion. I think that's one of the things. Okay, this is maybe another way to look at it. I think there are people in the Reformed world who maybe grew up in Baptist churches where we had an altar call every Sunday, right? And so conversion is almost a sacrament. It's a part of our life. It's what we thought was essential about church, is you end with an altar call and people get saved, right? I think there are people who grew up in that culture and who feel like that's missing, and getting someone to overhaul their theology is like a conversion. Like they sort of hold it at that same level. It's like this person came out of, a Baptist background, and like I got them all the way in, and it was like all the lights came on. As a matter of fact, when we interview people who are joining our church, I'll ask a lot of times, tell me about your personal journey, just about your walk with the Lord and your story. And I'm surprised at how many times I didn't ask, tell me how you became convicted of Reformed theology, right? Um, but that tends to be the story that a lot of folks are telling is like, well, I first read John Calvin. It's like, when did you accept John Calvin into your heart? It's a real, I just think we look at it as kind of a conversion. And so I think you've got pastors and former Baptists or whoever who are looking at it as an opportunity to like get another notch in the belt. Like I won someone over. I saved somebody from bad doctrine. And again, I just think that's wrong. I think that's wrong. It's a wrong focus. People are going to come. I think I've probably said this in another video, but I think that well, it's kind of like virtue, um, it's kind of like the difference between your head, your heart, and your stomach, right? Those are three kind of different ways to desire something or want something. You can know it, you can love it, or you can like crave it, right? Like head, heart, stomach, and we know that the head is a really really weak. Is really weak. And that's where the passage in Romans, where Paul says, I do what I hate to do. Right. Basically, he's saying, I know better. I know I shouldn't do this, but I still do it. Well, that's because you do what your stomach craves. Like your stomach, your craving is so much more powerful than either your head or your heart, the things you love. You may love something, but the craving beats it out all the time. And so that's why we want to train our bodies through habit to learn to love and crave the right things. Rightly ordered loves is the definition of virtue. And so in the same way, you're not going to, just through sheer knowledge, you're not going to have an actually transformative experience with theology. It's going to have to be something that is developed through habit and discipline. That's why, and so when I talk about keeping our kids, and that's one of our church's distinctives, is we're trying to have the kind of church community that really ties our children to the faith for their whole lives. And I think that we've been sold a bill of goods with worldview. We talk about worldview being the thing. If you just get the worldview right, those kids are gonna be great. They're gonna be set. I just got to call BS on that. I've just seen it too much. I've seen people have great worldviews who can argue with you, quoting the classical texts and the theologians and the philosophers who know all the stuff. I've seen too many of those people turn away from the faith. It doesn't work by itself, which is why I'm sure I've said this a bunch of times. Doug Wilson says it all the time. Our goal is not to teach our kids it's not to get our kids to obey the standard. It's to get our kids to love the standard. And so we're trying to inculcate a love, a true, sincere love, both in the heart and in the gut, to use that example, to get their bodies trained habitually to love the standard. And that's why I think that your worldview or your philosophy or theology is not going to be enough to keep your kids. It's going to have to be more. It's going to be the tradition. It's going to be the community. It's going to be the beauty of those things. The liturgy, the habits, the festivals, the celebrations. It's going to be all of those other things that kind of create a sort of comprehensive understanding and appreciation for the faith that pure catechesis, pure doctrinal training is not going to accomplish. And I'd love for someone to argue against that. I think that is intuitively known and understood, and we just see it. If you're paying attention, you see it. That knowledge by itself is not enough. And so, back to the point, back to Foster's quote or Foster's comments. You know, you're not going to win somebody over permanently, to your position through doctrinal arguments. Have those discussions, certainly. Don't you don't have to be shy about it, but also, but check yourself when you find yourself in that like zealot pursuit mode where you're like, I got him on the hook. Let's go. I'm just gonna reel him all the way in. Just check yourself. Slow your roll. You said something that struck a chord. Let it sit. Let it sit. Pray for the guy. God, bless this friend of mine who is thinking through this stuff, and it seems like today, as we were talking, I hit a soft spot that really resonated. Pray that you'd bless them as they think through it and process it, and help me, Lord, to not get overly zealous in my pursuit of changing their mind. This is not a conversion you get to notch on your belt. It doesn't get you any brownie points. Take your time. Let your way of life, let your pattern of life be the most compelling argument that you're making at all times. And the beauty of your relationships with your family and with your church, let those things speak louder and more, and frankly, just more compellingly than your words ever really will. So anyway, there's my little rant on that topic. A little longer than I thought it'd be, but it's a fun topic, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot me a comment, or I think I don't know if my email's on here anywhere. I think you can message people on YouTube. Leave me a comment if you want me to send you my email address or something. But anyway, have a great weekend or day or whatever, whenever you're watching this, and we'll see you next time.